Hi, John.
Hey, Alex.
Do you know what I hate?
What do you hate?
Canada!
Yeah, he's a rascal.
Yeah, I just want to scream his name because they say his name a lot in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, we watched AKIRA.
Fancy.
So let's start right there. I was listening to another podcast about this movie. Not about the movie. This movie was referenced on another podcast, and it's by someone that speaks Japanese.
Uh-huh.
And she said Akira.
Uh-huh.
And I feel racist saying it that way because I feel like I'm trying to do a Japanese accent.
Yeah, it's that kind of like the newscaster thing of like problems in Nicaragua, where you kind of overpronounce. Yeah, just it's Akira. It's fine.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go with Akira. Anybody that cares that I'm saying it in quotes wrong, just know that I'm doing it for a moral, a just reason. Because I feel like the only way to pronounce it right, I feel like I'm doing like a Breakfast at Tiffany's Mickey Rooney thing. Sorry, I got really distracted. I was closing my phone, and the as I was closing it, the headline was, Elon Musk agrees chess champion cheated, used anal beads for comms. Now, I don't know if this is a parody site. I don't know what I'm closing it. But I was just leaning over. It was in that, like, if you swipe right on a Google phone, it goes to, like, suggested topics and stories. I was like, what the okay. That was not what I was expecting. All right.
Yeah, I think, boy, that just makes me want to live in the dystopian future that Akira presents rather than the one that we do live in. Which I guess now is the past, because isn't it 2019 or is it?
It's 2019 in this movie. The distant future of 2019. So Akira is like such a major thing. It's hard to talk about as just like a movie. Mm-hmm. So how familiar are you with the manga?
Some. I never finished it. Like, I was obsessed with this movie when I was in high school. I saw it like at the beginning of summer my sophomore year, and I hated it when I first saw it. 'Cause I think I was looking for something just more violent and actiony than this was. Like, more of it. It's not that this definitely has its moments, but something more like
more violent. That would be difficult.
Something more like genocide or something, just gory nonsense. Because I couldn't get that on these U.S. cartoons. But then I revisited it at the end of the summer and just fell in love with it. And then I started watching it like at least once a week, if not more.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like once a weekend I would put that on. And I listened to the soundtrack a ton, and I started collecting the comics. At the time, they had started releasing the big black and white collected volumes, like the 6 volumes. Epic, which I think was a Marvel offshoot or something, had you could do individual comics, and it was sort of as I could find them. And so I'd collect stuff here and there. So I never finished because I didn't go back and read the collected versions, because I'm like, no, I've committed to finding all these comics, and I'm not going to read the like have the ending until I get them all. But I've just been started to reread it now after watching the movie, and I'm like, I don't care now. Like, those are all in a box in Michigan somewhere, and so it's like, yeah, I'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah, you've read more than I have. I started to read them. I mean, I got into anime in like, I don't know, 97-ish. Mm-hmm. And then I was like really into it for about, I don't know, 4 years. That was like the main thrust of my anime watching. I found, or one of my friends found, a kind of condensed Akira manga, which I think it just took like the major story points. It was some fan-made, fan edit almost. And I read some of that, and it was explained to me the rest of it. Not that I remember it particularly well, but like at one point I was familiar enough with the manga. Because there's some stuff in here that I feel like I understood parts of this movie a lot better than I had any right to. And I'm like, that must be some like really deep recessed part of the manga kind of bleeding through.
This movie was created before the manga was finished, which is not unheard of, particularly at that time. But it was wild that Otomo was able to, the creator of the comic was able to direct the thing as well. He was like, no, if we're going to do this, I need full creative control. They let him have it. They let him have a gigantic budget, which was unheard of at the time as well. He was doing 24 frames of animation, which usually it was 12. And that made this amazing, it's not like they took a gamble, but he was really able to take the visual stylings of the manga and make it more cinematic. I think just going back and rereading it now, there's elements there, but like when you see it live action, it's really impressive how he does it. And when I say live action, when you see it in action, you can see like how it's changed a bit, and just the sensibilities. And he's able to tell. It's a condensed version of the manga. Huge elements, and halfway through, Akira shows up. The explosion happens again, and then there's aftermath of that. Like Tetsuo's still alive, all this stuff. Like the big Tetsuo body stuff at the end didn't happen at that point. There's all this political machinations. There are characters that appear just in passing in the movie that are in the comic a lot more. Lady Miyako, the religious figure with the giant hair.
Oh yeah, I also remember vaguely that in the manga, I think like kind of really racist stereotypes of the United States.
Oh, probably.
Or like off the coast of Japan, and I think we're shelling Neo-Tokyo.
There is, yeah, because there starts to be more of an international thing after that happens, because you're going to draw the attention of the international community doing that. And I think, by condensing it down, he tells the story a lot more efficiently. I think because it hits the same notes. I think the political stuff you lose a bit, but it permeates everything to the point that I didn't, because when I watched this was only available on VHS. This awful, what's fairly called the streamlined dub, even though it's, I don't know who, it's like electronic something that really was behind it, but Streamline released it, so people know it as the streamlined dub. And it's not great as far as if you want actual like plot and stuff like that. There's a moment where at the beginning where a character says like they're heading west, and in the streamlined dub he says this chapter's finished. So they make it like more kind of poetic and weird, which is
weird.
Yeah, but at the same time I kind of liked, because it's all very confusing anyway, even if you have it laid out what's going on. But it ends up telling a smaller story in the middle of all this epicness, that like all this stuff is going on around them, but it's really about kind of Kaneda and Tetsuo being caught up in all this nonsense around them, and like being thrust into things they don't understand and how to deal with. Whereas I think having that be more of the focus makes this a bit more human of an epic movie.
Yeah, I do too. I can imagine. I'm well aware of the fact that there is some blowback from the manga fans that like didn't like the movie version because they took so much away. I mean, it did, like with every movie version. But yeah, I thought this was pretty damn streamlined, because I remember the movie being rather confusing. Mm-hmm. And I guess it is, but it feels like it's almost confusing on purpose. Like you're not meant to have definitive answers to absolutely everything.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at with, if your movie is ultimately about these two boys, caught up in all this, they don't have all the information.
Yeah.
You kind of get that sense as well. And I mean, that may sound like I'm being a bit of an apologist for it in that regard, but there is stuff that definitely doesn't make sense. But as far as like pure vibes go, if we want to go there, like as a teenager, I loved it because there was stuff that I could understand and relate to and be part of it. Now, being a bit older and my concerns and knowledge of the world has changed, that like I found the political background stuff a lot more interesting. And some of that was, I mentioned, that like with only being on VHS, like signs and graffiti around weren't translated. They were just like part of the scenery. Whereas now, watching the Blu-ray I have now, it tells you like, oh, this is about a strike that's going on, or, this is, some of them are like, all hail Lord Akira. So it deepens the religious aspect of it. But there was just like, hear a little thing at the beginning about protests due to like tax changes and unemployed people, and all that's going on in the background. They don't spend a lot of time with it, but this time I felt its presence a lot more. I think part of it's with our own situations.
The Lord Akira part, this is totally out of order, but that's the one part of the movie that I didn't get, and I feel like it was my fault. How the hell did anybody know who Akira was on the outside world? Well,
because it was an event that happened, and then probably, and I don't know how it actually goes down, like in the comics or whatever, because like it's happened before, but it's one of those things like where I don't know if stuff got slipped out, whispers became rumors, and so like that. Because in the comics, like that Lady Miyako character was actually one of the kids. Like she's number 19, I think, has it on her hand, but they don't have that on in the anime. There's no sign of it, so I'm not entirely sure. But that's a very good point. How is it just passed into legend what happened?
Yeah. So, I guess to set it for the audience a little bit, the movie opens with, in 1999, what looks like a nuclear explosion happens in Tokyo, which starts World War III. And then we pick up the story in 2019, and that leads to the events of Akira. And we learned over the course of the movie that original in quotes nuclear explosion was this genetically altered, I guess, child called AKIRA. I believe the scientific explanation is when explodey, and then explodey bad, and then for some reason that started World War III.
That is the literal translation.
I'm sure that made sense, but like I don't know how that started World War III other than
because like that's the thing. There's talk about like not knowing what's going on. There's a passing reference to that too about how. Yeah, no, this started World War III, and then the parliamentarians, when there's that little scene with the colonel, there's no evidence that even started it. We don't even know. And the colonel's like, "What are you talking about?" Yes, it was what started it. But,
yeah.
So it is confused. It's not really gone into, I guess. And like I said, maybe it does more in the manga, but it's basically just like, this is an explosion. It caused some bad stuff. We don't want that to happen again.
Sure. Now, let's talk about the more important things in all of this plot and whatever. The real movie, once we start in 2019, opens in a bar, and you see the coolest dude in the coolest red jacket with a pill on the back of it.
Yes.
And this movie just rules from there, because the next thing that happens is like, man, like the clown gang is, doing some dirty business. And you're thinking, oh, that's just like they're calling it the clown gang. No, it's like a gang of people kind of dressed like clowns.
Yeah.
And I was just like, everything from this movie has been stolen so much that like I had forgotten, because like that's Batman Beyond has that. There's been Batman movies with that, with the whole clown thing. Also, Capsule, whatever. This is after, because Capsule Corp with a similar logo is from Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, which I'm not sure. The only reason I bring that up is because Tetsuo, boy, does he look like Vegeta later in the film.
Oh, yeah, interesting. I mean,
and I wonder if there's like some weird cross-pollination or what the fuck was going on there.
I mean, it was the 80s when he started doing this, and so I don't know enough about Dragon Ball, but I'm sure it was going on at the time.
I think Dragon Ball was 80s. I don't know when who gives a shit. I just want to point out that it said Capsule. They're doing capsule drugs, which is great. His jacket's great, and he has like the coolest motorcycle ever.
After the fact, it was 1989, so it was like Dragon Ball was after Akira.
Dragon Ball was 89?
Dragon Ball Z, sorry.
Yeah, Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, because they say, oh, wow, yeah, that looks like shit for 89.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things got rough. But yeah, he does, because with the standy up hair and stuff like that. Which it's funny, because that character, again, that's a character that gets whittled down from the comic, because I think his name might actually be Jester, the leader of the clown gang, plays more of a role. He shows up after, Tetsuo, as we get into it, like Tetsuo gets his powers, he actually takes over the clown gang for a bit. There's a lot of like back and forth of Tetsuo like being in the facility and escaping. He's a lot more of it. Both he and Kaneda are bigger dicks in the comic. And so I think, again, sort of tightening that up was nice. And I don't think you lost too much, but that character, like I said, Jester, like he shows up after the explosion happens, the second explosion, and then he's more involved as well. But he just has a cameo, and it's fine. It's cool. Because that whole opening like motorcycle chase is so visually stunning.
Yeah.
And I have probably, even though I've seen the movie, a billion times, or when I was watching, I've seen it a billion times. I probably watched the first like 20 minutes of this movie 3 billion times.
It's pretty damn cool. Those light trail kind of things they're doing, like cell animation light trails off the back of motorcycles, looks so badass. The fighting choreography on the bikes is really crisp, and it sets up the kind of loose and just kind of the disregard for life that this movie has. I mean, people are just dying left and right, and no one gives a shit.
Yeah. Like when Tetsuo, during the fight, when he clubs that guy in the head with a pipe as he drives by, it's like, yeah, he probably just murdered that dude. But when I'm a kid watching it, I'm like, yeah, okay, they're gangs, they fight, it's fine. Totally just murdered that guy. The only one who seems affected by it is Kay at that one point. But
now that I'm older and like a little more sensitive to that stuff, I'm like, Jesus Christ, like you're murdering children for fun.
Yeah.
Which made me think, I wonder what it would be like to rewatch A Clockwork Orange at my age.
Yeah, I've had a similar thought.
So I haven't watched that since I was like maybe early 20s, late teens. And I wonder if I could even like sit through it. Like, I think it'd probably make me a little ill.
Yeah, because I'd probably find it a lot more uncomfortable viewing than I used to. It's still, it's still going to be a good movie, but it's my stomach for violence has, or I should say, my taste for violence has changed somewhat.
Yeah. On the note of this movie just opening up and like kind of establishing itself as, I am violent, I am gory, I don't give a shit about life. One of the first scenes we get is there's just, all right, so there's this random old guy walking around carrying, dragging a weird old kid behind him. A dog gets loose and just gets straight up popped. Like they murder a dog, like dead center screen. Like, this movie just, it sets its tone so purposefully in the early parts.
Yeah, and that cutting back and forth to the TV screens that are playing like an ad with a happy dog on it or whatever, and just the reality of like this gross traffic jam that people are in. And, it's kind of like Blade Runner in that regard of just like, it is a dystopia, but I don't know enough about Japanese history or culture to really weigh in on that stuff too much, but I have read some things that talk about this as real. It draws a lot on sort of post-war Japan, rapid expansion and critique of that.
Yeah.
Things of that nature that I don't, it's a little bit beyond me as not a student of Japanese history, but.
Yeah. I mean, and there's the very obvious one-to-one of the bombs being dropped, that's right there. And then immediately, technological culture accelerating after that, which is where you get the kind of, what do you call this? Like, neotech? What's that phrase? I'm blanking here.
Nanotech?
No. Like, what do you call, like, futury techno?
The future?
It's like a movie term.
Cyberpunk?
Cyberpunk. Yeah. Jesus Christ. I couldn't. None of the words were coming to me. I was just like, that very famous thing that I just cannot fucking think of.
This was me the entire day after I got my booster. It was just words were just not happening. It was so frustrating.
Yeah, I'm going into nearly month 2 of nonstop anxiety. I'm shocked I'm speaking as well as I am. So I'm going to forgive myself for getting the fucking word cyberpunk. Fine. Yeah, I don't remember where I was bringing up cyberpunk, but cyberpunk's cool. That's what I was bringing up. Yay!
Just the rapid increase, change in technologies and things like that. And I can't stress enough. Talk about the setting and the light streaks. Cell animation is it. I think for as much as I've seen this movie, I did not appreciate the animation the way I did this time. Just like, good God, the amount of effort, and because it's not just like, it's 24 frames a second. We did 24 frames of animation of a guy standing there. Like things are always moving. There's little stuff happening in the background. Things are incredibly detailed. Otomo's just like, he likes to draw really detailed stuff, I guess. And just like the animation's so fluid, and there's so much fluid animation. Like there's so many like flowing rivers. Like at the beginning when the one of the bikes crash in the tunnel, there's a tunnel, and like this fire extinguisher, automatic fire suppression system comes out and sprays stuff everywhere. It's just gorgeous to watch. Just this flowing like fire reducing fluid. Or
weirdly, I think watching this is probably the first time I've watched this since like, basically everything animated is CGI. Yeah. Makes it look better to me because it just, I don't know, the kind of craftsmanship it shines through a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think that's what got me thinking about that more is that, it's not that doing CG animation it's not an easy thing. It's also complex, and particularly if you want to make, good. But yeah, it really makes you appreciate the attention to detail and craftsmanship because like, all the intentionality, like you had to think this through that like, because you are spending so much time drawing all of this rather than, setting it up so a computer can do it. It's still effort, but I just feel like the intentionality is a lot more present.
Yeah.
In cell animation.
And I'm not trying to like dunk on CGI animation. Not at all. It's just, it's a different thing. And I mean, obviously the cell animation is a lot more work because it's every 24 fucking cells, whatever,
Unless it's the Disney, quote unquote, live action remakes. Those things are dog shit. And I don't know if you've seen the trailers for or anything from the Robert Zemeckis' new Pinocchio. It looks so bad. Or like they just announced.
I thought there was supposed to be Guillermo del Toro.
There is Guillermo del Toro. Robert Zemeckis' version is like the Disney version. It's one of those live action redos. Guillermo del Toro is more like stop motion. And then there's like they just announced like they're doing like the Little Mermaid, and it looks like garbage compared to what it was before. But yeah, that stuff it's okay to make fun of. In my opinion.
Okay, yeah, I noted, and I believe I will.
Yeah.
Thank you for the permission.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That sounded more sarcastic than I meant. I just meant that as like a fun thing.
No, I took it very seriously.
No, but sometimes you like say something, you're like, oh man, that sounds sarcastic. Mm-hmm. Like that is 100% not what.
Yeah.
So here's another thing. Not that I forgot about this movie, but I slipped my mind. Is the inciting incident is Tetsuo almost runs over one of the old young kids in the beginning of the
Chikashi, film. Yeah.
Over the years, slipped up in my head thinking that was AKIRA. Just because it's like the first kind of old, weird looking kid that you're like, I remember the whole thing in the basement, but I thought it was like that shit in Final Fantasy VII that I don't remember the name of. That dude's like mom or whatever, but it's like her essence, like
Genova. Yeah.
Yeah, that shit. I thought it was like a Genova thing, and Akira was the little kid. Yeah.
Well, actually, because now I'm getting my worry, and why I stopped reading the manga before this was like, I'm going to get this confused with the movie. And I don't remember if it's in the movie or the manga, where they realize the reason that Ryu and his group is after that little kid to begin with, they think that's Akira. They're not like trying to get him to get more information. They think that Takashi is Akira.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's in the movie or not.
Yeah, it's not really. It's because it's just like they have him, and then the stuff with Tetsuo happens, and you learn that Ryu and Kei are involved, but it doesn't really go into that. We're in the manga. There's an explicit moment where they're like, "Wait, what? That's not. Oh crap! We thought that was Akira." But yeah. So these the old kids Alex is referring to is they are children, but like their skin is blue, they're really wrinkly and desiccated, and their hair is white, presumably due to the drugs that they've been on to control their powers. We see a thing towards the end of the movie of them like getting trained up or being studied by the scientists, and they look like children at that time. And that was another thing that I didn't really put together when I was younger watching this. I'm just like, that's so horrible what you've done to those kids. Like you've just
So that was like, when did that happen? Like, so I couldn't figure out, obviously the drugs had a ton to do with it, but are they still kids, or are they 30-year-old kids? Not 30, but let's say 25-year-old kids, or are they 10-year-olds that just look terrible?
I think they are like 35-year-old kids, because they've been around pre-explosion. Because you see that.
Oh, that's right. They were there before the explosion.
But I was saying, like, I never had put that together, even though I watched it so many times. I never went like, oh yeah, no, they're actually like really old. I just went like, oh, they're somehow magical or something. Same thing where it's like their essences allow them to stay. I don't know. And that's the kind of problem with talking about anime and this movie, is that there's a lot of, like with regular movies, there's a lot of real dumb fucking stuff out there. When you're trying to explain it like, no, this is actually a masterpiece, this is really good. It's easier now, I think, with, the proliferation of anime and like Miyazaki and stuff like that. But when it's like, the late 90s and my dad thinks all Japanese animation is Speed Racer, or, everyone thinks it's Dragon Ball Z or Landlord Regalia or some other stupid, whatever you want to call it, where people with wild hair just say stuff about your heart echoes. Kingdom Hearts kind of nonsense. It's tough. Like, no, this is like a serious sci-fi dystopian movie. And I'm like, yeah, right, buddy. But it is. It's really good.
Let me ask you this, John. What the fuck is Landlord Regalia? That is, you've referenced that.
No, I forgot, because I made that
don't know what
before,
that is.
Because it sounds like a JRPG title. That's all.
Oh, okay. Because that could be the title of a thing.
Yeah,
I see much dumber titles than that.
Yeah.
Because I thought the first time you said it, I was like, oh, Fun Made Up name. But you used the same Fun Made Up name. I'm like, oh, is that like real? Okay.
No, it was just sitting there in my head. So I was struggling to think of the name of an actual anime. So
yeah, no, because I watched an anime called like My Beautiful Boyfriend or something like that. Not the whole one. Mm-hmm. I just saw the title on one of the streaming services and went, what? Okay, I'm just gonna I just want to experience one episode of My Beautiful Boyfriend or whatever. And, I mean, it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's just like this girl, she's got like a really beautiful boyfriend. That's the whole
episode. Like, you're just going, man, he's hot.
I essentially, I'm sure it goes somewhere from there, but it was, the first episode was very like, maybe, I guess he probably turns into like a vampire, and then he's probably part of JoJo's Wonderful Adventure. One of the things in AKIRA that I quite like and forgot, and you can miss it if you're not paying attention, is there's actually some kind of levity fun bits in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
We get this action sequence between our motorcycle gang and the clowns, and our gang gets brought to the police station, and there's like a fun interview thing. It's not fun, but it's like lighthearted.
Yeah.
Then there's just a straight up comedic scene with this guy suicide bombing the police station. It's like, long live the freedom revolution with a grenade. The grenade doesn't go off. So Kaneda tries to just pick up this chick he saw earlier. They leave, have a whole conversation. Then in the background, you just see part of the police station explode.
Yeah, the bomb actually went off.
Yeah. There's these fun little, I mean, fun's the wrong word, but like these comedic beats spread throughout what is a very dark movie.
Yeah, well, I think that softens that blow a little bit because it's not done in a, it's not done like in a well that happened kind of way, but it's definitely done with comedic timing. The way that it doesn't blow up and all the cops just rush him in and beat him up. And then they kind of like, they don't care anymore about Kaneda and their group because we're going to enact violence on this guy. So that's fine. We got what we wanted. And then it's a surprise, punchline to the whole thing that, turns out the bomb wasn't a dud. It does go off, but don't worry about it. Life, like you said, life is cheap in this world. So
yeah. In that scene, Kaneda he leans over the desk and looks at this mugshot sheet and he sees a really hot girl. I was like, wow, she's really attractive. Is that Kay he was looking at? Okay. Yeah. I assumed that was it, but I've got like semi-face blindness for like actual people, like people made out of lines. I was like, there's no fucking way I put that together.
Well, I mean, and I mean, honestly, Kay and Kaneda look very similar face-wise. That's not true of all the characters. There's a certain, you can kind of tell with Otomo's style, like the way his faces look. You're like, okay, that's an Otomo face, but her, they look very similar.
Part of the thing, and this is just a behind the scenes note, that I when referencing Kay, kept calling her Kaori because I got them confused. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my notes don't make sense. So I'm going to put that there because that's when I start seeing this show up. I'm like, oh yeah, I have no idea who anything is.
Crap.
But we learn, so during this, Tetsuo and the old baby, boss baby, Tetsuo and Alec Baldwin gets brought back to the military complex. And we find out that Tetsuo has a very special pattern about him. And it might be the very key to solving AKIRA. I understand what this is, but I don't understand why the way you look at the pattern is like a Burger King crown animation done in a circle. Like that is the least useful bit of technology.
It's strange, particularly because they have, and it comes into play later when they have you see the doctor looking at all this data that's pouring out of these machines, but then they have this like centrifuge that has a little disco aura thing happening. Yeah. It's like, that's the stuff. Probably just because it looks cool, I think is the answer. Is that I don't know if that's computer generated, that effect is computer generated because it doesn't necessarily look hand drawn, but it just looks cool, man.
By looking at this, I see Tetsuo has a funky beat, while AKIRA has a very funky beat. Oh no, the bass is about to drop. That's direct lines from the movie. I have a very weird version I watched.
Yeah.
Speaking of versions, I forgot to ask you before. John, have you had sex? Oh, no, speaking of versions. I watched the dubbed version that's on Hulu. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't expect you to know which one that is, but I thought maybe you could tell the audience which one you watched, and then at home they might know if,
I think they did the... I think that's like the 2001 remaster version they have on there. I'm not sure, but
the voices sounded dissimilar from what I remember, so that's probably true.
Yeah, because the options on the Blu-ray that I had was that one, the Japanese or the streamlined dub, and I went with the streamlined dub because it sounds weird to me when it's not. Because I watched it. I had a subtitled VHS as well, so I'd watch that occasionally. But so I put that on, but I put on the subtitles as well, just because I was curious how different the actual dialogue was.
So when I watched this movie in like the late 90s dub, that's the streamlined dub I probably saw?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what
Though
was
back
around.
then I was pretty snooty and was like a subs only guy for a while. So not kink shaming, but I was like a subs only guy for like a little while. So, but I'm pretty sure I watched it dub because I realized at some point, and this is not dunking on people that like dubbed only, because I think translation wise it actually works better and you hear the acting a lot better that way. But I just get too distracted. I'm such a literate person. Like I'm so words distract me more than I think most people that I'll just be kind of just waiting for more text to show up at the bottom and be like, oh, I haven't looked at the rest of the screen in like 20 seconds. So I kind of had to switch to dub.
Oh, it's understandable because it's a gorgeous movie, as we've been talking about. But I think in this case also it was, and I don't know how regular this is done now, but at the time it was less of a thing to record the voices first and animate to the voices, which is also what Otomo did.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so that's why like there's like to help like the whole fluidity of the animation, I think, and make it feel much more sort of natural, which I think works. But when you watch it in Japanese, if you watch it in English,
now I kind of feel bad not watching in Japanese because now that I know. But between having to take notes and reading, it would not have been a pleasant experience. I could have just watched it twice and be like a professional podcaster, but that would involve us like making enough money to not have day jobs. So
right.
let's not do that. Hey, this is a great time to mention that patreon.com/AlexBolin, Alex with 2 X's, is our Patreon, and we have a buttload of episodes up there, bonus episodes you've never heard. So sign up.
Yeah,
there's a link on johnalex8stuff.com.
It's getting into the Halloweeny times, so I'll probably do little horror things like I did last time.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, bring back John does firewalking or whatever.
Yep.
What'd you call that?
Myers talks with me.
That was close.
Yeah.
I can't believe I just laughed at my own joke, but I found, sometimes like I like fucking things up on purpose, but like I got so far away from the original thing that I'm not even sure if that would make sense as a joke, and that made me laugh.
That's most of what I do. It's fine.
Tetsuo escapes from the holding facility, and he goes to Kaori's, what I think it's her dorm maybe, or apartment, or living sitch, and he decides to steal Kanada's bike. Which I don't really understand the thinking behind that, but like, whatever. It's a cool bike.
Yeah, I don't know if his bike is gone, has been impounded or something. And also, it's established pretty early on that he likes that bike.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the best bike.
Yeah,
so
and if he's
that's totally
leaving anyway, which I also love, and I'm sure this is not the case in what you watched in the Streamlined dub. Anytime there's dubbed animation, like a dubbed anime, and like, hey, I'm from Tokyo over here. A lot of the women voices of like the gang's girlfriends like that all have this like, oh, what do you say? Chow ahead. That's funny. It's great.
I should have watched that one. I guess I chose the wrong one. But yeah, he steals Kanada's bike, and the clown gang goes after him in a bit of revenge. This is not me being Alex and trying to be titillating. Poor choice of words there. But they rip open Kaori's shirt to reveal her breast, and she has nipples.
Like most people.
Most anime I've watched don't do nipples. I just rewatched Neon Genesis Evangelion, and at one point Rei Ayanami ends up nude, and she's just got non-nippled boobs.
Well,
and that seems to be the standard.
But Rei's also a clone.
No, but that was just the last one I could think of.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much any non-hentai anime. I don't think I remember ever. I thought that was like a rule or something.
No,
or maybe
obviously
I just imposed that.
Pubic hair, or like the actual genitals in like movies.
Like I knew that.
But I know like Ninja Scroll got nipples all over the place. Ninja Scroll crazy with nipples.
All right. Well, now I got things to jack to.
That's all I ever wanted.
This movie, however, sexual assault always not good, but I'm glad that was the extent of it.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of rapey stuff in anime, and it was not nice, but it was good. It just ended there. Somebody came. There was just it's unfortunate incident that happened.
Yeah,
much more unfortunate incident is going to happen shortly thereafter, but it's not rapey. It's horrific. Always.
Because Kaneda and the rest of the gang are see Tetsuo steal the bikes. They're after Tetsuo. Then the clowns. There's a skirmish with the clowns. The assault on Kaori is stopped because Kaneda shows up, and they beat up the clowns, and then let Tetsuo beat the crap out of a guy, and then Tetsuo starts losing his mind and having hallucinations. He's getting overly violent with the guy. They're like, hey, cut it out. Still going on him, and starts having hallucinations of his organs falling out onto the pavement.
That was super cool.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that scene. And so his organs are falling out and we're watching it, but then it cuts to the angle of real life and him miming putting in organs back in himself, but there's nothing there. It's just, it was really effective.
And the scientists who have been monitoring knew that he had escaped and have been monitoring him nearby, go and snatch him up. Yeah,
which I enjoyed that sequence. But if you're talking about trying to do a super long manga series into a TV show, into a movie, it's odd they included this sequence where it's there's about 5 minutes where all that happens is he breaks out, he finds his chick, kicks a clown's ass, and then he has a bit of hallucination, and then he goes back to the lab where it started. I feel whatever. It's a great movie. I'm not complaining. It just seems if you got that much material to work with, you could have just had him hallucinate in the fucking, in the hospital or whatever.
Right. But I think having him doing it around his friends, I think gets Kaneda a little bit more involved in terms of, it's not just, we got to go find Tetsuo. It's like something's going on with this guy and now the government's involved. What the hell?
Yeah. That's a good point.
And like I said, in the comics, that happens like a couple of times. I think like he busts out once like that. And then another time when he is starting to go more mad and takes over the clown gang and kills Yamagata. We haven't talked much about this character, but like the Colonel is around as well, and I really like the Colonel as a character. I think one of the things that I enjoy about this movie is I like stories where like there's different factions all kind of involved. And they all have their own motivations and doing stuff, but there's not like a bad guy necessarily. Like Tetsuo is both like the protagonist and the antagonist, because you're kind of following his journey, but he's losing control of everything. And like this, it kind of goes out of his control, but he's still like sympathetic. The Colonel is trying to stop everything, but he's also like doing bad things as well. That it's all just, it's kind of gray and messy, but without being like, oh my God, look at how gray and messy we're all being.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he, so like there's some internal, this is where some of the political squabbles and stuff are happening, because he's trying to get, funding to make sure that the mistake of AKIRA doesn't happen again, that we can keep it locked down. Kaneda is, they're all hanging out, like the gang is always like hanging out at night and, busy downtown, and there's a terrorist attack and he sees Kay and he follows her and overhears their plan to rescue Tetsuo, and then they decide to bring him along because, well, this kid knows the kid that was taken, so he gets wrapped up in their plans. Their plans are also interesting because you also get a little bit of Ryu, or Roy in the streamlined version. It makes it sound like they're this kind of like, militant revolutionary group, but you come to find out later that like Roy is working for a parliament member named Mr. Nezu, and I think like Nezumi is Japanese for rat, and he looks like a rat, so real subtle there. But that it kind of like that they were pawns in Nezu's scheme, because Nezu had some, wanted the power of AKIRA for himself and all this stuff. But so I liked that so the way that all happens at the end, I like how that plays out. But anyway, so yeah, Kaneda joins them and they try to go infiltrate the hospital where Tetsuo is at. And at this point, Kay, like when they're kind of found by security, and Kay shoots a guy in the face. And this is like the only time that like violence affects somebody, because she's like being a terrorist or whatever. Like this is the first time it seemed like this is the first time she's committed violence against another human being, and is very shocked at like, I just shot a guy. Oh my God. Whereas Kaneda's like,
it was
hey,
pretty
don't worry
effective.
about it. Yeah. And he's like, even afterwards, like his dialogue, he's still trying to like hit on her. And he's like, I know you probably need some time because you shot a guy, but don't worry about it.
That was the worst part of his character in this movie.
Oh, he's even worse in the comic.
That's what I was going to say. Is I seem to remember that in the comics, he was much more of a rapscallion. But yeah, that part where he's still trying to like mac it after she just shot a dude in the face was like, oh man, fucking pick your spot.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty bad. This is also kind of cool, and I like this in the way Otomo does this. Whereas in the talkier scenes, the more like plot heavy scenes, whatever, like the animation is a lot more sort of realistic, I guess. But it gets so much more cartoony during the action scenes, so much more like lightweight, and just the visuals are so much more fun. Like so, there ends up being this chase in the sewers with these like flying carts, basically. These like hovercraft things that's really cool. And like just the use of light, the way he deals with light in this is really neat. Again, you just think of all like the intentionality and the handcrafted element of this, that it just seems like he keeps giving himself more to do. He's like, no, but this has to look really cool.
It is a hell of a lot of work. That hover motorcycle thing in the sewer sequence is so cool looking. It is so like kind of just the action makes sense. It goes back and forth so cleanly, and it just looks so gorgeous. And it didn't need to look that good. Like, no. This is hand drawn animation.
Yeah.
Like the amount of work for what is an unnecessary scene. Not that it's unnecessary, but like, boy, if you were the slightest bit lazier, you could make that. Just you could get away with it. But no, he went full fucking hog.
Yeah,
it's a gorgeous little sequence.
Yeah, and then all the while, this is Tetsuo is back in government care, but he's starting to freak out. And the kids, the three old kids, one of them, Kyoko, she is like the more, her telepsychic abilities lean more towards like premonition and stuff like that. She seems to have this power that that the other two don't have, where she has dreams and sees futures. I like how in the comic, it's a lot more sort of like flat. They live in this weird, they're kept in this like weird eternal kindergarten sort of thing, which leads to the confusion of, are they still kids or whatever? But like, this giant, like kind of like you would be at a kindergarten, giant stuffed animals and stuff like that. But she's in this, in the movie, she's in this wild, like pink, gigantic bed in the middle of nowhere. It looks like there's just like the spotlight on her, and it's a lot more sort of cinematic and dreamy, I guess. Or it gives her predictions a lot more weight, it seems like, rather than just being like, oh yeah, also I'm psychic. Yeah,
and when she gives the prediction, it's like she's like immediately falling back asleep. Like it's like that's all she can possibly accomplish.
Yeah, it takes a lot out of her. But they try to they basically hassle Tetsuo. And this is a fantastic scene where he starts hallucinating these like little, like a little stuffed bear, a stuffed rabbit, and a little car. And then they become gigantic. They start forming out of the different toys or something that are around his room and start accosting him.
Yes.
It's not until he accidentally steps on a glass and the kids see blood, they freak out and the illusion breaks. And then he's like, oh, okay, it's go time now.
That's one of the better sequences in this movie. Like there's these adorable little stuffed toys that are like joining him on the bed. And it's like, what the fuck is this like really light-hearted thing? And then it just turns into giant teddy bear body horror. It's what a nightmare-inducing scene.
And the soundtrack for this is so great. It's just a wild collection of instruments. But that whole scene with the Pyong little voices saying that is the soundtrack for this. It just adds to the nightmarish quality of it. But Tetsuo like figures out that, like I said, he's got all this power and he escapes because he now wants to find Akira.
He also learns how to fly. Like he's really coming into his own, like power wise. They've cut to the scientist at some point of like, how the fuck is he so powerful? Like this is not what we were thinking was going to happen here.
Yeah, in the comics too, there's a lot more reference to like the drugs he takes, not the pills they prescribe him, but because he's just taken so much drugs that might have something to do with it as well. But I also like when he does escape, that he like kind of like warps out of the office and is in, or out of the facility, and he's in midair and he's like, wait a minute, I can do this too.
Yeah.
But I like that it wasn't just like, oh, I'm in control now, because there's a lot of like powers that he seems like he's in control of, but I like that they kept that he's still kind of figuring this stuff out.
There's a great sequence around here where the colonel, like a messenger guy, comes up. He's like, "Hey, man, turns out you're fired. You were gonna arrest you because there's a blah blah blah. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Please shoot that guy." And his soldiers just murder this poor, lawyer.
Bureaucrat.
It was just, it's like, this movie is just such a casual view on death. It's fucking amazing. But then the colonel's just like, "Yep, well, that was stupid. All right, I guess I'm in charge now."
Yeah, because he starts his coup d'état, and it doesn't, again, like with the colonel, for a movie that's largely about power, his interest like isn't that like, well, now this is what I wanted, I'm actually in control of everything. He's just taking all these drastic measures to stop Akira from happening, to stop Tetsuo.
Yeah,
because this has gotten out of hand, and he knows he's somewhat responsible for it. But so he's just has to use the full force of everything. But I mean, there were obviously like political machinations and goings on happening before that. But it seems like in this moment that's what he's about, is just using the full force of the military to stop this, not to do anything else. He certainly has like some more reactionary beliefs, but it doesn't seem like the coup is about that. It's more just about stopping Akira.
We're starting to get to Tetsuo really becoming, villainous at this point, or at least like going down. Mm-hmm. So he goes, after he escaped, he goes to the bar that we were at earlier in the movie, and he asks the bartender for drug capsules or whatever. And the bartender's not like being too much of a dick to him. And he's like, "Hey man, I'm just going to charge you a little extra or whatever." So he just murders the shit out of him and like explodes the bar. It is like, and then one of the other kids, it's Yamagata and other guy, roll in, and they're like, "What the hell happened here?" And then they kind of look up, and like fucking Tetsuo is like, I don't know, like floating above the ceiling, just kind of freaking out. Like he went full villain not for no reason. Obviously he's got the reasoning behind it, but this really starts the kind of chain of him being instead of the person that bad things are happening to, he is now like the actual antagonist in charge of himself.
Tetsuo figures out that Akira is at the Olympic stadium that they're building. They were going to have the Olympics in 2020, which is funny because I think they're trying to do that now, right? Isn't that?
I think that happened, and it didn't get canceled because of COVID.
Yeah, basically.
Whoops. Yeah.
Yeah. But so he goes there, and then also like he's starting to be around in public more, Tetsuo. And so like this crowd sees him stopping a military attack with his mind, and so like, oh my god, this guy's Akira. We should follow him. He's gonna help us out because the government's terrible and evil, and now this coup's happening. He eventually gets to the Olympic Stadium. He and Kaneda have a standoff, and in the midst of that, he gets blasted by a satellite laser called Saul, which is a great scene, and ends up destroying his arm. That's just eliminating, like just melting off his right arm. But then when they go to fire it again, it's going to take out him and Kaneda, but he saves Kaneda. Like he creates enough of a force field that it protects both him and Kaneda. So even though they've just been fighting, they're still this like, well, I don't want you to die, buddy.
Yeah, he was like, his only friend. He was the one protecting him. So finally he's got power. So yeah, Tetsuo flies into space and destroys the Sol satellite, which is it's fine, but like that's where my credulity was stretched just the tiniest little bit of like, really, you're just flying to space? Whatever, it's fine. But
I mean, like it's more of a protracted thing in the again in the comics, but I also like that it takes that moment because this was like a pretty like intense scene that was going on. That becomes a very meditative moment as the satellite's falling to Earth, and then like Tetsuo rebuilds his arm out of metal and junk, and just the soundtrack is just kind of haunting, and it's this like, oh crap, this is what he can do now. This is not good.
Yeah, him rebuilding his arm kind of automatically from trash was pretty badass.
Yeah, and then of course it's not the thing that causes him problems, but it certainly doesn't help later because Kaori is with him at the Olympics, and the colonel finds him there, and Tetsuo is starting to lose control. His arm is the now destroyed arm is like pulsing, and like flesh is like pouring out of it. It's fusing with the rock throne he's sitting on, or the stone throne. And he's like, get me the drugs to protect the drugs he was on is wearing off. The colonel's like, no, come with me. I'll take you back to the lab. We'll get you fixed up. And Tetsuo's like, absolutely not. I'm not going back with you. And then just his body goes nuts. Fat guy goes nutsoid, basically.
And this is kind of the famous sequence from this movie. And boy, does it deserve it. Because this is it's gross. It's amazing. It is awful. It's terrifying. Like there is so much going on here. Like when he sucks in Kaori and Kaneda, and you see Kaori like screaming and just explodes. Like she just for pressure. Oh, it is brutal.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm not trying to do this. Like my body's not listening to me. I can't. And I like that. The power that he has is, this sort of ESP psychic power kind of stuff, but I like that it's manifested physically. I think that's an interesting way to do it rather than just be like, oh, I'm having these bad headaches and that's kind of it. How it just like the power needs somewhere to go. And so it's just making more flesh. Like it's inexplicable what's happening to him. Like there's no like, I'm sure there's nerds out there. Well, so, you can't create more mass than actually exists. And I don't know, but it's cool. So I like it.
Correct. That is the correct science.
This is the scene where they shout Kaneda and Tetsuo at each other 100 billion times. It happened already a little bit in their previous fight. And Kaneda's able to get out, and essentially the three kids are there, and Tetsuo has found Akira also. He's brought up I don't know what even you call it, because it's not even like a tomb, but whatever the sub-zero chamber they had Akira in, brings it to the surface and blows it up, revealing that Akira's been dead and has basically just been like dissected, and all his parts are just in individual little jars. So he's kind of stoked about it. He's like, well, now I'm the most powerful one. Ha 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 ha. But the Espers, the little kids, while Tetsuo is fighting with Kaneda and the Colonel and melting all to pieces, they basically reincarnate Akira. Yeah. They sort of focus their power, and the things come back together. And I like that it's not in the comics. Akira's a kid. Like he just hangs out and can use that power. But I like for the purposes of this movie that like his mere existence will just blow everything up. Like the power that he is the power now. He's not someone that wields it, but he's just power. And when he comes up, sure enough, that the other image very much associated with this movie is the glowing white sort of half orb starts expanding and destroying everything. And then you get, including Kaneda gets sucked into that. And I really like the scenes in there where he's inside because it doesn't just destroy everything or evaporate it. It kind of looks like it from the outside, but when you're inside it, you start to see like Kaneda like flying through balls within the giant ball. They're like the people themselves. Like the Espers kind of saved him because they made the choice to go in to the ball. Because they initially were just going to have AKIRA happen, blow everyone up, and be like, okay, well, that's done. We got to see our friend AKIRA again, but it's also this Tetsuo guy who's too much of a problem. But they go in to try to save Kaneda because he's an innocent person and he shouldn't be caught up in this. Although it's going to kill like so many other people, but whatever. But I like that scene in there where he's like, he goes into Tetsuo's dreams and like his memories and sees just, you get a little bit of Tetsuo backstory. And I could see the complaint of like, you know, I've seen other movies where it's like, well, it seems like kind of justification after the fact, or like you didn't do enough legwork at this. And now like, you're like, well, you feel bad for Tetsuo. But I think there's enough done throughout that you know what kind of a sad sack Tetsuo is. And seeing it play out there,
I would agree with that.
And having Kaneda experience it, I think is much more of the issue.
I thought it was fine at the end of the film, but I think it's reasonably clear if you're paying attention.
And I do like though that because I think that this, with the ending of this movie having a much more of a message of promise for the future, it really kind of humanizes Kaneda in this way. Like humanizes isn't the right word, but it really like chills him out a bit or something. Like he seems like kind of more empathetic at the end that he experienced all this.
Yeah, and then the movie kind of ends with Kaneda gets out of the weird white bubble new universe thing, and it doesn't destroy the world, which I'm not entirely sure what's happening there. And because the kids, I guess, stop.
Yeah, so because I was thinking about that once. So I've never been clear on what exactly happens there because they go in understanding that we can use our power to save him, but it also seems like maybe Tetsuo got involved in that. I'm not sure. Because that's
what I was thinking.
Yeah, because they're clearly, because Tetsuo like keeps showing him these things. It's not just like because he's just whatever getting caught up in the AKIRA bubble, like made him forget his physical maladies went away, so maybe he's able to control them more. I don't know, but yeah, because the kids also are able to warp the kernel away, basically as a thank you for taking care of them all those years. But so Kaneda escapes, and then you get this like little voiceover clip from before. One of them, I think, was Masaru saying, like, someday we'll have... There's a very sort of vague thing about, like, someday we'll have the power, or our power will get to some level, or something. It's not real clear.
So, yeah, I wrote it down. It said, because someday we ought to be able to, because it has already begun. At least that's translation. And then it ends with, I am Tetsuo.
So basically, I think they created another universe at the end, because this ball of light, like the AKIRA thing, like shrinks back down and Kaneda like catches it in his hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. That at the very end, you see this glowing ball of light and it says, I am Tetsuo. And then just galaxies start coming out of it. So it seemed like their powers combined created Captain Planet.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the scientist guy was looking at the findings a little bit earlier and he says, this is like seeing the beginning of the universe.
And then he gets crushed by his own equipment. Which is
I guess that...
Screw that guy.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah. Anything else?
No, I mean, it's like we've said, it's just a gorgeous film. It's the story-wise, it's a little muddled, but it rewards close attention. And it's just an amazing thing to just experience, even if you don't get it all. And I think that's something I liked about it too, is that feeling like, I even, when I was a kid, I was probably like, oh, this political stuff, I'm sure I'll understand that when I get older. I'm not going to worry about that at all right now, rather than actually like looking into it. And I still don't really understand it, but it's enjoyable on so many different levels.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the rewatch. I was somewhat hesitant because, anytime you rewatch something that you haven't watched for a long time that you used to love, you're always like, God, what kind of problematic stuff is there going to be? I've changed, obviously the movie hasn't, but man, no, I enjoyed it. I was, as I've talked about in, recent episodes, going through some anxiety stuff in my side of the world. I'm like, oh, this movie's going to be too much. But I was like, no, this is fine. Yeah. We like this. Not setting me off. Good times.
It's kind of similar thing where I was, I went on this sort of, Proustian reverie about it, about kind of remembering watching it so much. But it was interesting to see it from a different point of view now that I'm older and a different person. And also just that I think the movie itself is good enough that you can do that you can be like, oh, now I can look at it from this way, or I can look at it from that way. It's not just, going back and rewatching, some crappy action movie that you liked. It still might just be the same crappy action movie. But this one, new things were opened up to me this time around. But it still at the same time was extremely comfortable to watch, just because I'm like, oh yeah, this seeing old friends. Yeah. They're real and they're my friends.
So recommendations. Have you watched anything recently that you would recommend to the audience?
Well, if you want to stay on the anime tip, Shudder just got Perfect Blue which is an amazing, like, Brian De Palma style psychological thriller that's really well. It's different director, Satoshi Kon, who's does amazing work. I don't know if you've ever seen like Millennium Actress or Tokyo Godfathers. Darren Aronofsky ripped off some shots for Requiem for a Dream, which is, I don't know, it's kind of funny, but it's a great movie. It's like Black Swan too. Is very much has a lot of similar things. If you've ever seen that, I have not, but just what I know about it. But yeah, definitely check out Perfect Blue.
Excellent. I'm going to recommend something that I didn't even love, but I want you guys to support. And you need to support because it's a spunky little startup company called Amazon. But the Rings of Power, I'm a big J.R.R. Tolkien fan. And the fact that racist fuckheads got upset at this show because there's black elves in it infuriates me to no end. And it annoys me more than Amazon does. And I fuck those people so hard in their stupid racist faces. So I'm recommending the Rings of Power. It's actually fine. I've only watched the first 2 episodes.
I'm more irritated that not focusing on the real problem with the elves is that there are not hot elves on that show. And that's awful. Like, I don't know who the character is, but he's a dark-haired guy, kind of doughy features. Elves are supposed to be hot, not that guy. But yes. I haven't checked it out yet. I'm still convincing myself or trying to decide whether or not I like House of the Dragon, and so I'm going to figure that out before I go on another fantasy adventure. But I've been hearing good things from people that like Tolkien stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't remind me of Tolkien too much in tone, but
is that good or bad?
Bad. Well, not that it makes it bad. It just, I mean, I love Tolkien, so like I'd prefer that. But the tone they're taking is fine. And again, I'm only 2 episodes in, so it's actually I'm 1.5 episodes in. Racists are assholes. So support things they don't like.
Getting mad at made up universe because there are black people in it. Have fun with that.
Yeah, those pointy-eared ethereal creatures, that's fine. But pointy-eared ethereal creatures that have slightly darker skin.
Thank you.
Oh, please be still. It's not my heart. All right, so John, for next episode, I thought for once I'll listen to you and your constant, Alex, we need to watch more Marvel movies. Alex, we need more pop culture on the show. Mm-hmm. Alex, I love Kevin Feige so much. Mwah, 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 mwah.
I'm always saying
I said,
that.
Fine, John, your constant bickering has led me down this road. So we are going to watch the new Thor movie, Thor Love and Thunder.
Mm-hmm. And as not a fan of Thor Ragnarok, I'm excited.
Yeah, well, I've already seen it, so I'm not going to say anything, but it is not Thor Ragnarok.
Okay.
So whatever that means, we're not. But yeah, so for next time, we're watching Thor Love and Thunder, available on Disney Plus, and probably you can buy it other places and whatnot. You can follow us on Twitter at JawsPod. We are on Facebook, John and Alex Hate Stuff. And, if you like the show, tell your friends, post about it places, because that's the only way anybody ever finds out about stuff.
That's how I found out about Love and Thunder.
Exactly. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.